All right.
Hi, this is Queenie Clem, your literary ambassador. And today we have Book Talks with Javon Johnson, Cause He's Black. It is a poem. And we're talking with Author Kim Robinson, event planner Ellen Suddreth, author Tonya Barbee, and graphic designer John Clement. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Hi.
you. Glad to be here.
All right, let's get started. Cause he's black. Javon Johnson. Can we play him, John?
Yeah, I can play it.
Okay.
Let me get back to it here. Hopefully everybody can hear it. All right, here we go.
So I'm driving down the street with my 4-year-old nephew. He knocking back a juice box, me a Snapple. Today, y'all, we are doing manly shit. I love watching the way his mind works. He asks a million questions. Uncle, why is the sky blue? Uncle, how do cars go? Uncle, why don't dogs talk? Uncle, uncle, uncle. He asks uncle, uncle, uncle. He asks uncle, 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 as if his voice box is a work record. I try my best to answer every question I do. I say it's because the way the sun lights up the outer space is because engines make the wheels go. It's because their minds aren't quite like ours. I say yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we laugh. Smiles, looks out the window, spots a cop car, drops his seat and says, "Oh man, Uncle, 5-0, we gotta hide." I'll be honest. Not happy with the way we raise our black boys. Don't like the fact that he learned to hide from the cops well before he knew how to read. Angrier that his survival depends more on his ability to deal with authorities than it does his own literacy. Get up, I yell at him. In this car, in this family, we are not afraid of the law. I wonder if he can hear the uncertainty. Is today the day he learns that Uncle is willing to lie to him? That I'm more human than I am hero. We both know the truth is far more complex than do not hide. Both know too many black boys who disappeared, names lost, know too many Trayvon Martins, Oscar Grants, and Abner Louimas, know too many Sean Bells and Amadou Diallos, know too well that we are the hard-boiled sons of Emmett Till still. We both know it's not about whether or not the shooter is racist. It's about how poor black boys are treated as problems well before we're treated as people. Black boys in this country cannot afford to play cops and robbers if we're always considered the latter. Don't have the luxuries of playing war if we're already in one. Where I'm from, seeing cop cars drive down the street feels a lot like low-flying planes in New York City. Where I'm from, routine traffic stops are more like minefields. Any wrong move could very well mean your life. And how do I look my nephew in his apple face and tell him to be strong when we both know black boys who are murdered every day simply for standing up for themselves? I take him by the hand, I say be strong. Tell him, I say be smart, be kind, and polite. Know your laws. Be aware of how quickly your hand moves to pocket for wallet or ID. Be more aware of how quickly an officer's hand moves to holster for gun. Be black, be a boy, have fun, because this world will force you to become a man far more quickly than you'll ever have to need to. He lets go of my hand, but Uncle, he asks, Uncle, what happens if the cop is really me? And it scares me to know that he, like so many other black boys, getting ready for a war I can't prepare him for. That was Javon.
All righty. To me, listening to that video is very animated, lively, upbeat, jovial, and entertaining. And then it goes into exquisite, wondering why and uncertainties. Scared, afraid, fearful, shocked, tense, angry. and then it gives you knowledge. And Tonya, you have you want to start us off?
Sure. The first thing I want to do is highlight those gentlemen, those young children who we lost. I want to highlight their names and share them with Zachary and talk about them. I know he's aware of Trayvon Martin's, but the others, I need to do some research on, but I'm going to have him do the work, because unlike what the poet said, this awesome young man, Javon Johnson, he says we can't prepare. He didn't know how he could prepare his nephew for. I tend to disagree with that. We can discuss with our children what's going on the news. We can discuss with our children what these cops are doing. We can also talk to our children about bad behavior, hanging with the wrong crowds. A certain look depicts to those in the uniform a bad boy, whether they are or not. And all these things need to be discussed with our young children. And it's unfortunate that the cops are coming from another angle. There are some that are hateful, some that are racist, and there are some that are fearful. And there are some that are just inexperienced. But all together, no matter what their issue is, we need to have these conversations with our children, and not from a standpoint of being fearful, but of being aware and pray for the best. Because all this that he listed here is in existence today, not 40 years ago, today. And it's really frightening. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thank you for that. Great poem, by the way.
Yes. John?
Yeah, you might want to go last on me because I got a lot to talk about on it.
All right. Miss Kim?
Yes.
Do you have any input you would like to say right now?
I understand how the child feels. Growing up where I grew up during the middle of the Watts riots and seeing everything I saw, it was natural for us to be afraid of the police. And then even with my 30-year-old son, we were in Los Angeles and he saw things that would make him afraid of the police. Where versus my last two children, we grew up in Texas in an all-white area, and they have no fear of the police because they didn't see that kind of stuff when they were children. But when we visited Compton, they saw something totally different, and that kind of put that fear in there.
Okay. Miss Ellen?
Well, for me, I'm from Chicago, and the cops were your neighborhood cops. They knew everybody in the neighborhood, and that's what we start off with, cops knowing their neighborhood. And I think that's part of the fabric that fell off, is they send other cops into a area that they don't know the people there, because we may know that Ray has some challenges, and then when somebody come from the outside and they don't know those challenges. So that's what I like about what we grew up with. And then I thought about him being 4 years old and how his uncle had a candid talk with him. Now I had girls first, so I thought this was like out of touch, and now my son is 21 and I see a lot of stuff, not personally, but to other people. And I'm not shocked because they told us, I'm wondering, how do a Caucasian live their life? Are they told, back away from the counter, keep your hands out of your pocket, don't have your hoodie on? This is all taught back then in the 70s and 80s, but not personally until I grew up and see this. And so I was very livid to the fact that I want them to see us first as human,
right,
before they see us like cattle.
Wow.
All right. John?
So for me, um, there's a lot in this poetry. I mean, the first thing for me is it's reflective for me because I have a nephew, and my nephew is 4. Both my nephews actually. I kind of dealt with the same thing. Uncle this, Uncle John this, Uncle John that, and asking all of those questions as we're riding, to the mall or as we're going to the park or whatever. So this poem is very, um, I guess I won't say sentimental, but I get it. I get the uncle answering all the questions, the nephew asking all the questions. Why does this and why does that, and what makes this work and why does this not work, and those types of things. And to get to the point where the 4-year-old automatically says we got to hide from the police. I feel like part of it is societal, where kids, when we were growing up, we didn't watch the news. We watched cartoons, we watched TV shows, Good Times, and those type of shows. We didn't know anything about the news. We didn't know about police brutality. We didn't know about somebody got shot. We didn't know about all these things. But now, because we're in the age of social media, we're in the age of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and just the local news, kids are now more knowledgeable of what's actually happening. So this particular child, was this something that they saw, or was this something they were taught?
Mm-hmm.
Being a black kid, does this kid know about the Trayvon Martins? Does this kid know, about the Abners? And it's like, was this kid taught that, hey, you got to hide from the police? Or did he see it firsthand, or even secondhand by watching the news? How did he know that we hide from the police? And it's like, that's what kind of makes me think, is like, is this a seen behavior or a taught behavior? And the uncle, who even in his voice, he's saying, get up, we don't do this, we don't hide from the police. Even in saying that, like you said, there was uncertainty in his voice. It's like, I got to put on a front that this is what we do, but do I really believe what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's a lot in this poem, especially the passion in his voice. Even though he may have rehearsed it and rehearsed it and rehearsed it to say this poetry in front of these people, there's some real life stuff going on in this poem, and the passion in his voice, it makes you be like, okay, like he's saying, black boys in this country cannot afford to play cops and robbers if we're always considered the robber.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's a lot in this poem that really sticks out with me.
Okay. First question. Do you think his uncle explained it to him like a 4-year-old would comprehend it?
I think he did, because kids are so much smarter now than back in the day, and I think they understand a lot more. I know, talking to my own nephew, he says stuff, and I'm like, how do you know what animatronics is? How do you know? Oh well, because we had a conversation. He was like, yeah, Chuck E. Cheese. When we go to Chuck E. Cheese, those are called animatronics. And I'm like, how does a 7 or 6-year-old know what animatronics are? So I feel like him talking to his nephew as he did, I think the nephew understood him, because they understand a lot more than we give them credit for.
I thought he did too, but I also thought that uncle was releasing him to be a kid. Tell him, be a kid right now. I know these things happen when he with his dad. His dad, I don't know if he lived a life of crime. I don't know what happens, but to have your child in the car with you and they see this, or like you said, firsthand or secondhand, So I like the fact that he was releasing him to have freedom to be a kid.
Yeah. Be a kid while you can be a kid, because once you grow up, you know, there's no turning back.
Kim or Tonya, do you have any input?
Well, the comment, well, in the middle of the poem, he says angrier that his survival depends more on his ability to deal with authorities than it does his own literacy. To me, that means you should be focusing more on survival in America now, more so than your education.
Mm.
You got to know how to act. You got to know, because I am teaching my son as the last few years how to greet an adult, how to do all these things, how to stand out on a more honorable way, go above and beyond. But my fear in teaching him all this stuff is so that he won't be one of them, one of the victims. And I should be focusing on what book did you read. But on top of homework, I'm concerned about him surviving out there in the streets, because we're in the inner city. Where I'm at, we live in the suburbs, but I know he's going to be hanging out in DC sometimes, going places. He'll be 18 before you know it. So I want to prepare him as much as I can as a mother and a single mom, of being ready for that, because they're going to more than likely they will have an encounter more than not have an encounter. The way I see the news and the way I see social media, it's always something going on where they claim it was a misunderstanding, but on the other hand, it was a lot worse than that. So yeah, I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned that this young man had to is write even a poem about this. It just shows you how far we have to still go, and we're nowhere near where we ought to be as a race. And then raising boys. You said you got a 21-year-old. Oh my God, my son is coaching all over the DMV, my oldest one, who's 38. And every time he's at a game in the inner city, I'm like, oh my God, I pray that he's okay. Because you think about losing. These parents fighting nowadays over 13-year-olds losing a basketball game. Imagine my son in the inner city with grown-ups playing, and how things can get out of hand. So it's just this poem brings light to how scary it is for our race this year. This year more than any year. It's just scary to me. And all this did was bring awareness.
Miss Kim?
Well, I know that when I was growing up, there was a little boy in the front yard, and he was playing with a toy gun. And he pointed it. It was a toy, but the police, after I guess they weren't aware of that, it looked too much like a real gun, and they shot the little boy. So that kind of scarred me. The police go, and then watching the Watts riots from the upper window and looking down on what was going on, that scarred me. But then police are people too, you got good and you got bad.
That's right.
So when you need them, you know what I mean? It's like you look at it differently when you need them than how they're interacting with others.
Right.
But I do think it was a very poignant poem. I think it is a shame that our children have to be afraid of people that they are told are supposed to be protecting them. And you don't know which way things are gonna go. Whether they're really gonna protect you or whether they just don't give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought it was a little, I don't want to say contradictory, but where he was telling his nephew, be strong, be smart, be kind, be polite, know your laws, be aware of how quickly your hand moves to your pocket for ID or your wallet. But he's telling them all these things that are like, be aware, be cognizant. But then on the flip side, he says, be a boy and have fun. And it's like, okay, do you want your nephew to be a child or do you want him to be an adult?
I think at that moment he kind of had a flashback of him being an adult and trying to put in his arsenal or his belt these things, tool belt, that these things can happen. And he didn't want him to be ignorant to the devices of society. A lot of things is societal that happens. You know, you hear different things in this area and then you see something in that area. Those are societal things that happens. And just to have all of these things instead of life, shouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I did a long story short, a talk with Tony Lindsay, and a guy came on the Zoom like this. He was shocked. He said, all I teach my kid is to not let anybody hurt you, like bully you or something. He said, that's the extent. You guys got to go through all of that. And I said, yeah, you have to go through all of that. And that's crazy.
It is.
And there were laws written that we had to abide by for the people of color. We have a lot of laws that I don't know if it's if they still stand, but something in the mind says it still stands. But I wish they would know that. When I think about it, I'm like, okay, there's more people in a society besides Black and white people. You have Asian, you have all colors of the rainbow. Can we let them be, and it's okay for everybody to be different because God made diversity.
I think about growing up, we watched shows like The Rifleman. We watched shows like Bonanza and Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. So we watched shows like that. Even going forward a little bit to Family Matters, where the father was a police officer. Those types of shows, from Andy Griffith to, The Rifleman and people like that, where we were taught that the law served and protected. They were the good guys. They were the sheriffs who got the bad guy out of town. And for this 4-year-old to say, what happens if the cop is really mean? We never grew up knowing or even thinking that a cop would be mean. He was the good guy. He was the guy who wore white. He was the guy with the badge and the white hat. So what would make this child ask about a cop being mean? Because we never knew a cop to be mean. We didn't know about bad policemen or police brutality or anything like that. Like, what would make this child ask that particular question?
The news, listening to their mom, their parents, their grandparents, the church. They're hearing it from all sources, and they're seeing it on TV. Kids are watching videos. Kids, my son told me I need to watch Cardi B. She really does know how to twerk.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think my body can move that way.
Tell me about it. Hey, look, I'm honest. I did go look at it. Okay, my mouth was wide open. No wonder she was who she was in that limelight, because oh my gosh. But back to the point, I'm not going to distract us anymore. They watched stuff that we didn't even know they watched, because I didn't know he was watching those type of videos on YouTube. But he says, Mom, you can watch anything on YouTube. So that was the response he gave me. So it's no telling where this little 4-year-old got all this information from to know that cops can be mean. But it's sad that, as one of you pointed out today, that Kim pointed out, the cops, we also know them to be good cops. If you look on social media long enough, you'll see a white cop in a urban community, inner city somewhere, doing a line dancing or helping someone across the street. So a person of color across the street. So there are good ones out there. It's just they're bad people everywhere. Look at the teacher who told the kid, the 10-year-old, that Martin Luther King committed suicide.
Wow.
Yes. And she was a white teacher. She had to resign from her job. And luckily, the parents had told that 10-year-old he had been taught Black history at home. So when he got misconstrued information, he brought it back home to his parents. And they, of course, dealt with it at the school. But she also told them that you can't wear athletic gear because you're only setting yourself up for prison. That's what she told this child. And he went home and told his parents. So it just makes us have to make sure our homework is done too, to counter these people who have these ill feelings toward our race. They could be not only a cop, they could be a teacher, they could be in the church, they could be everywhere. Just bad seeds planted all over, and especially now that we have who we have in the office, they feel like they're more privy to show us who they really are. They don't have to wear the mask anymore. They just come out with it.
I think it was Miss Ellen that said it earlier about, I think that the police officers that they put in certain neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, I think it would be better if those police officers either came from those neighborhoods or they knew those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because when you have police officers who come in and they know nothing about the culture, they know nothing about those neighborhoods or the people that live in those neighborhoods, they may be joking with that police officer who's from that neighborhood, but somebody outside may come in and they might think it's not a joke. And they, pull their gun out thinking, oh, you're being disrespectful to me. But somebody who's from that neighborhood knows how the people are in that neighborhood. So you're going to have less incidents happening when the people know who those people are and how those people are.
Our culture is very powerful in the sense that people love what we do. We had to do it hard. Back in slavery, our freedom was in dancing. Then they had us to entertain. So if we knew ourselves, sometimes we're self-inflicted. If we knew the power or the influence that we have on other culture, because when you go in the house, if you of a certain race, you want to, what they say, act Black. And they have some people, like I've seen on video, that they go get like some Koreans or Asian descendant, they go get their hair done, wash their hair some kind of way, and then just put these rods on there, make it as kinky as possible. But then folks were saying, but you could do that for a day. So we need to understand who we are. Fathers is not in the home. I think all of this stems from father voids, and then you have these gangs, that's your father, and different things like that. So, and where are the uncles? We only have Uncle Steve Harvey and nephew Tommy. Where are the uncles at? Like this uncle really poured a lot into his nephew.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
All
to
right.
kind of piggyback on that, where are the fathers?
Please, thank you.
Because if this was an uncle, why was the uncle having to take the nephew out when it could have been the father taking the nephew out?
Yeah.
All right, y'all. That's our time. I would like to thank Kim Robinson, Tonya Barbee, Ellen Suddreth, and John Clement. And the poem was Javon Johnson, "Cause He's Black." I thank you all for coming in and doing the book talk with me today. I'm your host, Queenie, the literary ambassador. This is Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Have a blessed day and happy reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Y'all have a great one.
You too.